Hey guys, continuing our videos, Exhortation to Philosophy, Iamblichus' chapter 8. Uh, Iamblichus says that life seems important and great, so grandiose, to man because of two key things. One is ignorance, and another one is the perception that life is short. And that's pretty much it. I don't think he elaborates further. So I'll elaborate what I understand it by this. Life is short is part of ignorance, as I understand it. Because if the person knew the way the reality is structured, they would understand that life is actually, in a way, endless. Because there's so many lives. Uh, so I guess this could fall under ignorance also. But this limited perception forces the person to orient themselves purely to this life and consider what is happening in this life as important. And psychologically, if the person does this, then they're going to devote energy and resources and time and effort towards things of this life, whatever those things might be. If there is a job, for example, and the job is not very ethical, let's say, as currently given the financial, political situations in the world, very typical situation. A lot of the jobs are very unethical. Because of this and this, the person will stick to the job as much as possible. They will be afraid to lose it because of how that might impact this life. If the person had knowledge, true knowledge of how reality is structured, they would consider this life not so important. They would consider much more important how this life contributes to development of the soul, to development of virtue. And this job, they would run from it like it's hell, because they realize that living one life like this in this job, even though it might be comfortable now, could hurt the soul and bind them to hundreds of other lives in which they'd have to pay for the repercussions of what they're doing in this life. This could be one argument. But again, in terms of philosophy, this would not quite be a philosopher. A philosopher does not run from one fear uh, towards courage. So he's not made courageous by running from fears. A philosopher, if we remember this, I think this will be in the following chapters that we'll talk about. A philosopher is made courageous by wisdom, by transcending fears. So the way I understand it is the philosopher would understand, knowing the nature of reality, would understand how the unethical job influences their soul. And because of that, naturally, would not want to hurt their soul, would not want to hurt themselves, rather than run from fears of hell or anything like this that some other thought structures give us. So that's how I understand it. So again, this should exhort us to the study of philosophy. Also remember that this idea in psychology, the idea that something is important, often, especially in the Western world, often causes anxiety. The more important you consider something, the more anxious and stressed you might become. So it's not surprising that statistically people are becoming more and more anxious and depressed as the time is progressing. And I made a video on my Russian channel where I discussed the World Health Organization report on depression, where WHO said that by 2020, depression will be number one immobilizer of people in the world. And right now it's number two. And number one is some physical, I don't remember, some physical illness or something. So you can see the way the world is moving. And in depression, often we see, okay, there are different types of depression, but we often see that the person believes they're not doing something important. They're wasting their life, they are not important, and so forth. Again, this whole fluctuation on the idea of importance is going on. But of course, each depression is different, so we'd have to consider specific factors. So that's it, we're kind of sidetracked. The key point of this chapter is not knowing the nature of reality, not knowing the high truths, gives us the idea that life is short and breeds the ideas that life is important, life is great, and thus fixation on one life when that one life could be horrific for the soul, the way we live that life. That's it. Thank you for watching, and click a video if it appears now, and I'll meditate while YouTube shows up the videos.